Sometimes there's difficult circumstances, but the issue's important. And so, you have to make that decision. Am I going to take a case to court where there's a real chance that we're just going to lose, because even if the court accepts the facts as we see them, they might not think it supports a legal award. One of the areas where this happens is in the idea of physical assaults on ships, or even sexual harassment on ships. The law that applies in maritime law is very different in those areas than shore-based law. And so we had a case years ago where an electrician on a ship got beat up by the bosun on the ship. The bosun found him when they were alone down in the galley and got in his face when the electrician wouldn't fight. Then he just reared back and blasted him right in the face, knocked him down, and stood over him and taunted him. You got a he said, she said situation. It was a one-punch fight. There was no obvious injury, but it really profoundly affected my client. And he developed some serious psychological issues, and he just never did get back to work. These are tough cases because the seaman's employer is not, or the ship isn't liable for the assaults of crew members. Those are things that are considered to be outside the course. They don't hire people to beat people up on the ship. They hire them to come on and do their work as a crew. So the ship can't be held responsible unless the seaman's behavior is so far outside the norm that the ship is made unsafe merely because of the person's presence aboard. And so most of the cases that have found that are really extreme. They're just horrible factual circumstances, and where people would say the guy's a psychopath. The ship can't be safe with somebody like that on it. It's like a mooring line that's rotted and is going to part. So in this case, we tried on the basis that this bosun was of that sort, but the facts of the case didn't shout that. But it was interesting that bosun's testimony did. His testimony was videotaped for trial because he was a seaman. He was going to be away. He denied that he'd had the fight, but when asked whether he'd hit him, he said, if I had hit him, no one would be wondering whether or not a fight had occurred. He says, did you want to hurt him? He says, oh yeah. He'd have never worked again if I'd have got hold of him. His testimony was so reeking of hatred that the jury perceived it. One of the things that hurt him in the case was that the captain testified in support of the bosun, the guy that had thrown the fight. The captain had said that, this guy was a great guy. He was one of the few sailors that he would be willing to welcome home to have dinner with his wife and family. And then for whatever reason, the captain, after his testimony, was sitting in court while we played the video of the bosun's testimony. And while the bosun was testifying about the physical damage he wanted to inflict, some of the judges saw the captain chuckling, sitting in the thing, chuckling. That made an impact. So anyway, that was a tough decision, and we made that decision to take that case to trial, and we were successful. But it doesn't always work that way on these cases.